Hey, hey, hey. Oh, let me get the light, make the light better here. Sorry. Oh, there we go. Hey, welcome. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining with me today. So, yeah, I thought we would go ahead and go through Delphi and, what's happening with that case. I mean, the trial's over. Richard Allen was convicted. He was found guilty by a jury. And is that the end of it? I don't know. It might be. It might not be. Certainly there is going to be an appeal later, but Richard Allen is going to have to sit in prison for a while, I think. In any case, if you're new and you don't know about the Delphi case that I'm talking about, let me try to make it as short as possible. By the way, that is Cassie, right there, whatever, behind me. Cassie, short for Casanova, because he was the only male with about 6 other cats. Mumsy's in the house. Woohoo! So back in 2017, on February 13th, 2 young girls, Abby and Libby, went to a hiking area near their home in Delphi, Indiana, and went missing. People were searching for them, and they were found the next day in the hiking area, and they had been murdered. Okay. And for 5.5 years, the law enforcement, it included the Delphi police, the county sheriffs, the Indiana State Police. It included the FBI for a while, until they were asked to, like, we don't need you anymore. And so, yeah, 5.5 years. They went through many suspects. They investigated Ron Logan, the owner of the property. They investigated Kevin Klein and his father, I believe Tony Klein, that were the owners of I believe it was Snapchat profile. It was social media. The name on the profile was Anthony Schatz. However, they just stole pictures of a young man, claimed that this was Anthony Schatz, and it wasn't really Anthony. It was Kagan Klein. And if he had other people had access, that's questionable whether they did or did not have access to that account. So it was being used as a catfish account to lure young women to either like take sexy pictures of themselves, or sometimes even lure them in person. And so Abby, well, there's Abby and Libby. I'm a little bit confused at this point whether it was, I always thought it was Abby, but then I was hearing Libby, because Abby did have a boyfriend. Abby was 13, had a boyfriend who was, I don't know, like a senior in high school or something. A little something messed up about that. But anyway, Libby, I don't think, had a boyfriend, so maybe she was the one that was expecting to meet Anthony Schatz. Anyway, the girls had chatted and were planning to meet this person. So did this person kill them? Well, they were ruled out during the investigation. They were also investigating, at least some of the officers were investigating some gentleman by the name of Brad Holder and Patrick Westfall. Their connection, Patrick Westfall lived in Delphi at the time. Brad Holder was the father of Logan Holder, the boyfriend of Abby. And they were both involved in a Satru, which is an Odinist type religion. And there was also some connection to the Vinlanders, which is a bit more of a gang that is an Odinist gang. So there was this possibility that maybe the girls had been murdered as a sacrifice. All these things were being investigated during the 5 years and other things. And then after 5.5 years, they decided to go after a man who had called the tip line in the very next day and said, because police are saying, if you have any information, if you were out on the trails, excuse me, contact us, let us know what you saw, because even though you think it might not be anything, it might be that missing piece that we need, right? That's normal. Law enforcement always makes that kind of call, usually when they need leads and they're looking for someone who committed a crime. So he did. He called the tip line and said, "Yeah, I was out hiking on the trails that day. Ended up meeting with someone who was on the task force. They weren't particularly law enforcement. His name was Dugan, I believe, and he worked for like the Natural Resources Department of Natural Resource, Fishing and Game, whatever, right? But he was part of the task force, and so he went to follow up on the tip, and he interviewed Richard Allen, and it was just filed away. And then after 5.5 years, someone was going through all the tips and organizing them and everything, and she came across this one and said, maybe you guys should take a second look at this. And so they did, and then that's when they honed in on Richard Allen. The problem is, it appears that at that point, law enforcement didn't really seem to be following the evidence as much as they were trying to make evidence fit for Richard Allen. And if it didn't fit, they just pushed it aside. And if it looked like it fit, or they could squeeze it around and make it fit, then they kept it. But during discovery, they turned over everything. And I guess they just figured that the defense attorneys, who were public defenders, they were appointed by the court, that they wouldn't be interested. They just like, dude, take the plea deal, you know? But they came to believe that he was innocent. I don't think that they would have spent so much time and resources, as much as they did, if they didn't believe he was innocent. But they fought for him. And so over the next 2 years, every time they went to court, the judge would just side with the prosecutor all the time. And so then we get to the trial, and a lot of evidence is excluded. A lot of like you're not allowed to mention Ron Logan. He's the owner of the property. Wouldn't that like just normally come up in like, well, who owned the property? Ron Logan, No, they can't mention his name. They can't mention Odinism. They can't mention Kagan Klein. And they can't mention Brad Holder. They can't mention Logan Holder. They can't mention Patrick Westfall. So they can't say Abby had a boyfriend. They can't mention that. They can't mention that she was going to meet somebody at the bridge, because they can't mention Anthony Schatz. I mean, this is really strange. And quite frankly, it reminded me a lot of the O.J. Simpson case. Because Judge Ito did the same thing. And then the jury was really mad when they found out all the evidence that wasn't allowed to be presented in court, because they would have found him guilty. But they followed the instructions that they were given and with the evidence that was presented to them. And so they said not guilty. And so they did their job. Hey, Chalet in the house. Glad you're here. and you're multitasking, that's fine. Yeah, so the trial went on with what was allowed. The jury deliberated for several days, and I figured either they would do not guilty or they'd be hung. I was actually quite surprised that they came back with guilty, because there's just so much of what the state presented that didn't fit, So I have a few notes here of things, and please, if there's something that I don't mention, then please bring it up. So the first thing I have mentioned, that like the thing that bothers me the most is the timeline. So the state says that they were dropped off at like 1:49, because I believe at 1:48 or something, shortly just there before, Libby's sister, Kelsey, is the one who drove them to the park, and she passed a camera. All right. And that camera saw her car just before where she would be dropping them off. So that sets a timeline. That sets a thing. Then there was a Snapchat that was a selfie. I believe it was Snapchat, but there was a selfie that the girls took while they were in the car. And that got uploaded around that time as well. Then they go to the bridge. So they get out of the car. It's assumed. There's some people that say that they never made it to the park. Okay, so let me let you know that there are some people, and they have their reasons why they believe that maybe something happened prior to this, and Kelsey drove there, but the girls weren't in the car. Or maybe they were in the car, but she never dropped them off. She took them to someplace until later, right? Basically kidnapping them. So there's some people that believe that, but I'm not going to go down that road, but I'll just let you know that is something that's out there. So we're going to go with the state says that they were dropped off. They walked straight from where they were dropped off. I hope I got that. To the Monon High Bridge, which is an old railroad trestle. And they start walking across it. And about halfway across, Libby takes a picture of the bridge. Nobody's in it, nothing. This was at 2:07. Okay, so it's less than 10 minutes. What, that's 8 minutes. No, excuse me, 2:06. Because 2:07 was the photo with Abby. That wasn't on her phone. Okay. So less than 10 minutes. They're halfway across the bridge. Libby takes a picture of the bridge with nobody and nothing on it. That's in her phone. That's time stamped. So somebody took a picture at the bridge. Now we're all assuming that they're halfway across the bridge looking to the north. Now there's some people that think maybe somebody was on the north side of the bridge looking south and snap that picture. I can maybe explain more about that later. There was a picture that police found on social media. They never found it in her phone. And this picture is of Abby standing on the bridge that Libby took of Abby. Now there's a lot of speculation whether or not that was even real, because it wasn't in her phone. And it wasn't in the Snapchat cache. So it was kind of sus, but for years, that didn't come out until trial, that it wasn't in the phone. So even though some people were speculating that, this looks like there's evidence of photoshopping on this picture. I'm not sure. There were people that questioned how real it was. But for the most part, everybody's thinking that it's real, and that at 2:07, she took this picture through Snapchat, and it went up into Snapchat, and then somebody screenshotted their phone with that picture. And because there was the screenshot of the Snapchat, that's what everybody had to see, right? That's 2:07. So then at 2:13, 6 minutes later, there's a video. Now this video was released early on, a couple months maybe after, and there's a guy. Then this person's like in the background, but police have like zoomed in on just this guy, and he's only taking like one step or a step and a half, and they looped it a couple of times to make it like look like he's walking. All right, that's not questioned. And so they were asking people, do you know this guy? We want to talk to him. Do you know who this is? And he became known as Bridge Guy. Does Richard Allen look like Bridge Guy? Meh, kind of. You know how analysis can be done with shadows and like, okay, here's a tree and here's a shadow when it was this time of day, and the width of the railroad trestle is this wide, and each railroad tie is this wide, and you can figure out somebody's height. There are experts that can do that. And nobody did that. So we don't know exactly how, and they were questioned. The law enforcement was questioned, well, why didn't you do that? And I don't know, I don't think they had a good excuse. They just didn't bother. Yeah, that is an interesting point. So, but everybody seems to think that Bridge Guy is probably at least 5'9", 5'10", maybe not quite 6 foot, but that he's a tall guy. Most people think that. And they've always been thinking that, right? But Richard Allen is only like 5'4". Some people say he's 5'5". Some people say he's 5'4". I think, I don't know, I think his driver's license said one thing, his fishing license said something else, right? But I believe when they booked him into jail, they said he was 5'4". So that's kind of official. So he's 5'4". That's pretty short, right? Now, the probable cause affidavit to arrest Richard Allen said that there were quite a few witnesses. There were some girls on the trail. There was a lady on the trail. There was a lady that was driving in her car that saw someone walking on the road. We'll get to that in the timeline. None of these witnesses you ever watch a court hearing where, I've been watching quite a few cases. I watched the ballerina one, I watched the Karen Reed one, and all this. And every time you have a witness that had seen the defendant, they'll say, and do you see that person here today? Yes. Can you point to them? They point. And then for the record, for the stenographer, they'll say, let the record show that so-and-so witness pointed to the defendant. Does that ring a bell? Yeah, it does. Not one witness was asked to identify Richard Allen in the courtroom. Not one. And all of the descriptions, they're there telling their descriptions. Well, it was a tall, skinny guy. He was young. He had curly hair. He was wearing black. He was wearing blue. They all had different descriptions, and none of their descriptions described Richard Allen. Jury, wouldn't that be raising, doubt? just a little bit of reasonable doubt? Why didn't any of those descriptions describe that guy right there that I'm looking at? Why didn't anybody point him out and say, yeah, that's the guy? And that would feel sus to me, right? But maybe there was enough other evidence that convinced them. But we're doing a wrap up. We're doing a wrap up of all of like what what happened. Okay, so 2:13 is the time of this video of Bridge Guy. Now, there was also a little audio clip. Police were saying this is like 44 seconds long. The whole video. We're only playing this little clip. So if anybody recognizes this voice, please call the tip line, right? And it said down the hill. 3 words, down the hill. Later, then they added a word that was somewhere. They even said it's not consecutive. We've put them together so that maybe you can hear a little bit more voice. And so then it was guy down the hill. Okay, so they got hundreds, maybe thousands of tips. One person they got hundreds of tips about. Remember, I mentioned Brad Holder. There were hundreds of tips. Not one person, either with the video or with the audio, ever said, you know what? That looks like or that sounds like Richard Allen. Not one tip. They didn't ever get one tip from anyone recognizing Richard Allen. All right. It could happen. So now, during the trial, was the first time those people that were in the courtroom, because it was not televised, the people in the courtroom got to actually see the whole video. And they only played it twice. Now, if the jury wanted to see it again, they would allow the jury to see it again. I think they did ask to see the enhanced video. So first they played the unenhanced raw video. Then they played the enhanced video. Okay, that was the one time and the second time. And that was it. First time, everybody in that courtroom were like, where's the bridge guy? I didn't see the bridge guy. Where's the bridge guy? Because he was this big in the background, really far away in the background, really tiny. They didn't even see him. It's like, what? So during the enhanced video, they were looking a little bit closer, and plus it had been enhanced, so they were able to see, but he's still small and tiny. Right? He wasn't blown up. He was still small and tiny. But then you get to go on and hear all of the audio and the timing of the audio. So it was something like, okay, oh wait, and first let me say this video, it's like somebody has their phone and they don't want anyone to know they're recording. This is how fast. So it's like you see the railroad trestle. It was that fast. That's how fast the video was. Okay. And so then the phone's still on. You see the ground. You see part of the shirt of Abby walking by. Okay. And then you hear, hey guys, and they say something back. It's from the way it was described, because I didn't hear it. I wasn't in the courtroom. The way it was described, it was almost like they were saying hi back. Like this was maybe somebody that they knew. Okay. So guys, yeah, whatever. And then you hear down the hill, and it's like there's no path. And then there's a part where law enforcement says that, probably with headphones and listening again and again and again and again and fiddling with all the settings, it sounded like a slide of a gun was being cocked back. Okay. People that were there and just heard the natural audio said it sounded like there was like someone walking on leaves, like the leaves were crunching or something. I mean, so there was just natural sounds. They didn't hear anything that sounded mechanical. So take that for what that's worth. Let's see. So the other thing about that is that holding it like this, guys, down, blah, 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 down the hill. How did the guy that was walking behind get close enough to manhandle them, point the gun at them, whatever? I mean, if he was halfway across the bridge and then pointed the gun at them, I mean, it seems to me, first thing I would do would be run, because they're not close enough to get a good shot, right? So how did he get close enough to secure them? And so it almost seems like maybe there was like someone behind Libby, somebody already there on that side of the bridge that's because you don't see, I mean, even whether bridge guy made it to them or didn't make it to them, she's holding the phone down like this, so you don't see, So if I have to wonder, well, could it be this or could it be that? To me, you check the box on doubt again. That's some doubt. It's not proven beyond a reasonable doubt. If there's another option that it could be, to me, that there's like an equal sign that equals doubt, right? So timeline. Let's stick to the timeline. I'm kind of filling you in on pieces as we're going on the timeline. So this is 2:13 that this video is taken. At 2:14, now somebody tries to unlock the phone. So apparently, I don't know, you've got the hand, you click on something, it's playing a video, you click on it and it goes off. And then at 1 minute later, someone tries to open the phone and isn't able to, okay? That could be Libby, like realizing that it like went off and she wants to try and get back in, but she's so nervous that, she's a bit panicked and she's nervous and she's not tapping it. How many times do you, do whatever you do? I mean, sometimes you have a pattern that you go on a pattern. Sometimes you have to do different numbers, and you miss one or you do something a little bit wrong. You got to do it again, right? Happens all the time. And I'm not nervous, right? So that's a possibility. Could have been Libby trying to, and then she couldn't, so she stuck it in her pocket or whatever, or maybe the person saw what she was doing and took it away from her. It could have been the person took it away and tried to open it. Someone else tried to open it. We don't know. But the phone data says someone tried to unlock the phone at that point. So at 2:14. So now we're to 2:14. And I'm just going like with the phone timeline right now. There's also information with her, she had an iPhone and that has Apple Health data about steps and things like that. So we're going to have to add that in a minute. Okay, so 2:14, someone tries to unlock the phone. We've heard down the hill, so they're going down a hill, right? What's immediately, now if you're on the south side of the bridge, which is where the police are saying, law enforcement is saying this happened, then just about 10 feet down is a private drive. I think it's just a gravel road, okay? I've seen video of people there. I think that's all it is, just a gravel road that goes to somebody named Brad Weber's house. Now, that house was owned by his mother. Maybe now he owns it because it's been since 2017. So about 10 feet down is that. Then the bridge is about 60 feet high. So then let's say there's like another 50 feet down to the river. We're going to get to this problem with the timeline. So 2 2:14 is the last time. I mean, last time someone tries to do something with the phone. There's some time. I can't remember exactly. It's in my notes. I can't remember exactly how long, but there's some time where the phone wasn't moving. Okay, with the Apple Health data. So they weren't walking anywhere. They could have been in a car, but they weren't walking. So the prosecution says that Richard Allen, in his confession, which we'll get to confessions, that we're on timeline, in his confession that he approached the girls at the south side of the bridge, that he racked his gun there, and that the shell casing fell out there, but the shell casing was found at the crime scene, which we're getting to. Then he was going to assault the girls, and he was at some point trying to do that. Whether, are there clothes on, not clothes not on, is he just, how far in that? But his intention was to assault them, and he saw a van coming on that road. So was he above the road? Was he below the road already? There was no movement of the phone. Okay. Then you get the phone, you get 50 steps, 50 feet, 50 meters or 68 steps, I think. And then the phone at 2:32 doesn't move again. And they figure that's the point that it is at the crime scene under Libby's body, because it was found under Libby's body. So the prosecution is saying that at 2:32, the phone was under Libby's body. Well, let's go from even 2:14, 24, it's 10 minutes. 34 would be, so 18 minutes. Okay, so you have an 18-minute window to get the girls from wherever they are on the south side by the bridge, right? If they're above the private drive or just below the private drive. But he hadn't walked them across the creek until after he saw the van. And the van, they're saying, came by at 2:27. Which there's a whole, and the van was being driven by Brad Weber. They had him on the stand. He clocked out of work at 2:02. Did he have enough time to get from work there? His previous testimony said he stopped at his little ATM cash machine things and he to service those, and he didn't go straight home. That's what he said before. Now he's saying he went straight home. But okay, let's give the police, the prosecution is saying at 2:27 the van went by, and according to his confession, when he saw the van, he got spooked. He stopped the assault, said, "Oh, I gotta kill them instead." And then he went across, so that he had not crossed the river until after he saw the van. That's the This is the prosecution. The prosecution says he, according to his confession, saw the van, got spooked, and then went across the river. And then killed them at the spot and then left them there. Okay. That, him being finished, is supposed to be 2:32. Got a cat here in front of me. Lay down, baby. So in 18 minutes, he's supposed to get the girls the rest of the way down the hill to the creek, cross the creek, then go up, it's about 10 feet or so, up the creek, up the side of the creek to where they were killed, kill Abby by cutting her throat, kill Libby by it seemed more like where Abby was like straight across, all the way across from side to side, where Libby had like more vertical marks, almost more like stab marks, or maybe like if you were to like field dress a deer and hang it upside down and like drain the blood out of the deer, would you maybe like make an incision? I don't, oh, sorry. That's not part of the prosecution's timeline. So, but anyway, yeah, she had like 3 or 4 slashes that were more like incisions than Abby's was. Abby's was straight across. Libby's was not. So he's got to do that. Abby was naked, but, excuse me, Libby was naked, and Abby was in some of her own clothes, and she had Libby's clothes on her. Now, whether you're just holding a gun at someone and making them change their clothes, or whether they're already dead and you're trying to put clothes on dead weight, either way, even if you're just holding the gun and say, okay, put on her clothes, you take off your clothes. She takes off the clothes. Okay, now you put them on. That's going to take some time. And then that's while they're still alive. You haven't killed them yet, if it goes that way. And we've got 18 minutes to work with. I mean, you've already eaten up maybe 10 minutes getting across the creek to the the crime scene. Right? Let's give them 20 minutes. 10 to get across the creek, and then 10 minutes at the crime scene to do the murder, to do the staging, which includes changing the clothes, to grab some sticks and put on the body, which the prosecution says was an attempt to conceal the bodies. Now, Michelle After Dark, apparently somebody who was involved with the trial on somewhere on the internet. So not a leaked photo, but it was like a published photo, which I don't know, still not really supposed to be out there. Anyway, she found a photo of the girls, and she blacked out the girls just where you can see the actual sticks, the ground and the sticks. So you could see the sticks and how they were, not just a sketch of the sticks. You could see the actual sticks. I'm sorry. You've got one stick with another stick with another stick. I can't see them just being, oh, let me throw this stick. Let me throw this stick. They look carefully posed. They look like you're making a house of cards or something, right? Now, a lot of people speculate on what shapes these sticks are making, most likely being runes in the Odinist thing, all right? But even if you don't have the right rune, or it was just some kind of imaginary thing that had some kind of symbolism for the person who did it, or maybe they thought if they wanted to frame Odinist, that if they put sticks in a certain way that it would end up looking like a rune, like the Odinist had done it. But they don't look random. All right. I have a screenshot of that, but I don't know that, Michelle After Dark did that. And so I don't feel right about putting that up. But you could go to see her video, and you can see that if you're interested. So you had to grab the sticks, and let's say it was random. All right. Okay. I'm saying I don't think so. Let's say it's random. And the prosecution's right. It is random. I have to have enough time to grab some sticks and put them on the bodies, on both bodies. I don't know. If I'm being fair, if the girls are already dead and the phone's already under the body, he could take as much time as he wants to get the sticks. I'm gonna be fair. I'm gonna be fair here. That doesn't necessarily fall in front of the 232, right? Could have still been putting the sticks on after, but it just doesn't make sense. With I don't think there's enough time forensically, with the autopsies and the blood splatter guy and all this kind of evidence that the prosecution presented. I just don't see it. I don't see it being enough time. So for me, that's doubt. And as far as time, I'm really, 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 really disappointed in the medical examiner or the forensic pathologist or whatever title this person had for not looking for, not testing certain things for time of death. If you've watched me for a while, you know that I've already done videos where I talk about all the different things about time of death. And it's probably in my true crime playlist. And talk and all the different, the vitreous fluid of the eye, the liver temperature, the core body temperature in the liver, blah blah blah. There's like a million different ways, and I already presented like which ones of those ways would make a difference. Within, okay, so the prosecution is saying that they're gone 2:32. The defense is saying no, that they were held somewhere, brought back, and then killed maybe 2 a.m., between 2 and 4 a.m. Now, so that is like 12 hours difference. Sorry, 12 hours difference. The changes that happen in the body with those 12 hours can you say at 2:32 they died? No. But you could say between 1 and 3 in the afternoon they died. You can maybe make a 2-hour window, right? Same for you could say between 2 and 4 a.m., that they died. You could say a good forensic pathologist that does the right testing can do that. Stomach contents, they had nothing. So when is the last time they ate? Because if they had lunch before they left for the trail at 12:30, there should still be something in their stomach. If they only had pancakes for breakfast and didn't eat any lunch, then that would already be digested, and it wouldn't matter whether it was the 2:30 p.m. or 2 to 4 a.m. It wouldn't make a difference. But if they had something for lunch, two young girls, we're going to go hiking. I can't believe, yeah, they had banana pancakes for breakfast. We know Derek German made them banana pancakes for breakfast. But what was it, brunch or what? Even if they had a late breakfast at 10 or 11, I don't know, pancakes. Aren't you going to be hungry by 1:30 and you're going to go hiking? You need to have some food. You need to take a trail bar with you. I don't know. It just doesn't seem likely to me that they wouldn't have had something in their stomachs, that it would have been fully digested at 2:30 if they were killed at 2:30. But they had nothing in their stomach. But the coroner or forensic pathologist, he would not say it. He literally said that his window for the time of death is the last time they were seen to the time they were found. That was his medical opinion. I am so disgusted with that because they can do better. Anyway, their reason for going to the bridge, we have the grandmother and the prosecution is pretty much saying, oh, it's such a great day. The weather is so great. Let's go for a hike. Totally spontaneously. So nobody knew that they were going, so any meeting, anybody kidnapping them was totally random because nobody knew that they were going to the bridge. because it was totally spontaneous, because it was just a beautiful day. Hey, let's go for a hike. Whereas we know from the Anthony Schatz account that they were planning to meet someone, and they didn't want to tell the grown-ups that, they're 13 and 14 years old. They'll be like just turned 14, so they're practically both 13 years old, and they're going to meet a guy. They don't want their parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles and whatever, the adults in the family, to know that they're going to meet a guy. If there's evidence about that, but that wasn't really brought up. Could they have been going to meet Logan Holder? Could Logan have said to Abby, hey, come to the bridge and let's meet up, as a lure for his father? Is that possible? Did anybody from the Anthony Schatz account show up? Was it just a coincidence that you had one predator arranging to meet them and a second predator got them? It's possible. Prosecution didn't say that, though. That wasn't their case. And the defense couldn't bring all that up. They couldn't mention any of those people. They couldn't mention any of that evidence. They couldn't mention the geofencing. So you know what was going on at 2:32? What kind of evidence law enforcement uncovered? I think maybe the FBI uncovered this. I'm not sure who. I think the FBI did a cast report through geofencing. There were 3 phones right where their bodies were found. Within 10, 20 yards, something like that, right? You would have seen the girls, right? They were close enough, you would have seen the girls. So either they were witnesses to something that happened, or they're perpetrators of something that happened, or nothing had happened yet. One of those 3. Law enforcement never even bothered to find out whose phones those were. They just got like code numbers of this phone and this phone and this phone that were there at 2:30, right where the girls were killed. Now, if you're law enforcement, isn't that one of the first things you're going to do? Oh my gosh, 3 phones were right there at the crime scene. Who were they? Who were those people that were there? They never followed up to get that information, because you have to like contact the phone company and this and that and get warrants and things or whatever, and they just never did it. Why? If you really want killers, aren't you whether those people were the killers or just witnesses? Because you would have heard something. If you're that close, you're going to hear something. Believe me, there's going to be some kind of noise. Even the pathologist was talking about that one of the girls, I think it was Libby, the windpipe, the trachea was not cut. So even after she was bleeding to death, she had the ability to scream. Did she? I don't know. But she had the ability to, according to his own testimony. So that's interesting going reason. Let's see. Confessions. Well, if a confession is all it takes to say, okay, this is the person, then you have to consider that a man named Elvis Fields also made a confession, which was more accurate than Richard Allen's. Richard Allen's confessions don't really fit. Not to mention, they say, oh, he confessed 60 times. You know what those 60 times were? I think I killed the girls. 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 No detail. Like only one of them had a narrative. And that was while he was in the middle of a psychosis. All right. I mean, that was established. He did slip into a psychosis. All right, eating feces and smearing feces and all kinds of nasty stuff. All right, banging his head. I don't know if he was banging it on the wall or banging it on the floor, but he was banging his head. He was incoherent. Every time he talks to someone, he's incoherent, except for this one time that he confesses a narrative to a psychologist that's treating him, that before she started treating him was a true crime buff and following this case on all the social media accounts and all the social media groups. She was active in the social media groups, not just like lurking. She was active in these social media groups about this case. Yeah, true crime, but not just any true crime. This case. And then it's like, whoa, they're asking me to be the psychologist for Richard Allen that I've been talking about for 5 years. And she's the one that comes up with this narrative. Oh, this beautiful narrative of how he did it, which still had inaccuracies. Like, oh, I did the gun before I crossed the creek. Well, that's not true. I mean, that's not what happened, is what I mean. Some of his other confessions were, I shot the girls, I buried the girls. So these 60 confessions that they have, some of them are him saying things that aren't correct. Most of them. Only one had something that they could fit, right? Like I talked about in the beginning. Only one. And every other word he speaks to the warden, to the other people in the prison guards, to anybody, to the lawyers, to the psychologist, the psychiatrist, any other word he speaks is incoherent. Except for this one time in the middle of all that incoherency where he tells this beautiful narrative that has a couple things wrong. Because you know what? That psychologist didn't have the discovery. And all those confessions that he made that were wrong, like I shot them, I buried them, things like that, Judge Gull didn't allow in. So the jury never heard it. To weigh. Well, yeah, he had 60 confessions and 59 of them were wrong. And one of them was right. And one of them, that one that was right, was coherent in the middle of all this incoherency. Yet we've got a man named Elvis Fields who confessed to multiple people, multiple details that were correct. And he's a little bit slow. Everybody knows he's the slow guy, like of Mice and Men or something. He's a little slow. Okay. Does that mean you don't believe him? Because he doesn't know what he's talking about because he's slow? No, you know what I find about people that are just a little slow? They're good people, but they're a little bit slow. They're easy to manipulate, and they usually tell the truth because they don't know how to lie. That's what I find about people like that. But law enforcement was like, nope, not going down that road. Even though you had 3 members of the task force that spent at least 3 years following those leads and pushing for, like, here's evidence about this person. Here's evidence about with the Odinist, the Brad Holder, the Patrick Westphal, the Elvis Fields, and a couple of other people. Saying, look at all this evidence, investigate more. It's kind of like with the geofencing, right? There's 3 phones at the time of the deaths, at the time that you're saying are the deaths, and you're not even going to check who those phones belong to? Doesn't make sense. That's when the true crime community kind of latches onto something, when it doesn't make sense. If it made sense, we wouldn't. It's like, oh, good job, excellent, good job. You did a great job, law enforcement. When it doesn't make sense, and then we start, no, that if it's not that, what else could it be, right? So why didn't Elvis Fields' confession have just as much weight as Richard Allen's. Not for the jury. They never heard Elvis Fields. He was banned. Judge Gull said, no mention of Elvis Fields. So they didn't know that there was someone else who confessed correct facts. Who's somebody that probably doesn't know how to lie. Chalet says cleaning up cat stuff. That's good. Still listening though. Thank you for checking in and saying exactly. So that's how much weight I get. So now you know my opinion on the confessions. For me, there's more weight to Elvis's confession than there is to Richard Allen's confession. All right. The sticks, not placed at random. We went over that. Oh, the blood on Libby's face. So until the trial, we didn't know anything. I mean, we had the Franks memorandum that was submitted by the defense, which was, I don't know, like 100 and something pages or whatever. It was, and it gave a lot of details. So until that point, for like 6 years, since the girls had been murdered, nobody knew anything about the crime scene, right? How they were killed, or they knew where, but they didn't know anything about how or any details at all. They kept all details under wraps. But then the Franks memorandum filed by the defense comes out, and it tells a lot. And so we knew that there was no blood on Abby, but there was some blood on Libby. Libby's the one that was naked, and but it wasn't like blood that came out of her wounds necessarily. It was. This is what the Franks memorandum said. It almost made it sound like maybe that it was sprinkled on her or something, is what it sounded like. But well, now the trial, we get some information. There was blood on her face, but it was dripping this way. So if she had been like standing up, somebody stood behind you and then cut your neck or something, the blood would go down. But the blood was going this way. So the blood splatter expert guy and the forensic pathologist, they said that there was one small pool of blood. Now, was it enough blood that was missing? I don't know. Because before the trial, there was speculation about whether or not, like, the girls had been drained of their blood. Okay, there was speculation about that. Because there wasn't enough blood at the crime scene. Okay, it wasn't in their bodies and it wasn't at the crime scene. So where did it go? All right, and I don't know if there was something like that in the Franks memo or not, or if it was just pure speculation. But that was going around. So now we find out that there is a pool of blood, not under the girls or anything. It's away from the girls, and there was a tree that had a marking of blood on it, and it was Libby's blood. It was tested as Libby's blood. And then there was controversy as to whether or not that was like the blood was like painted on as a rune or a symbol, or if somebody had blood on their hands and they leaned on the tree to like brace themselves, and that's how it got on the tree. Okay. Libby did have blood on her hands. However, there was one spot that didn't have blood on her hands, as if something, like if I had this in my hand, then the blood's everywhere, and then you move that, and then you have a clean spot, right? There was a shape, like, not like my kissing potion, 1970s kissing potion, cherry. I'm wondering if it could have been a necklace or something shaped like Thor's hammer, or like a battle axe kind of thing, or whatever, according to Andrea Burkhart trying to describe it. But whatever it was the shape that was in her palm that did not have blood. So the blood splatter and pathologists were saying she was killed by, she was cut by the tree. She put her hands on her throat as a reflex, which then that's how the blood got on her hands, and she touched the tree, and she stumbled and maybe crawled or fell at the spot where the blood was pooled, and then she was dragged. This is they're saying she was dragged from that pool to where her body was staged. It's not that far, and because one hand was up high above her, right? So they're saying that they pulled her by that one hand and dragged her into position. And so then once they got her there, then they just let go of her hand, and so her hand's above her head. Okay. You know, something that I just thought of that I haven't heard mentioned anywhere. Maybe it was, maybe I just didn't hear it. She's got blood on her hands because she was going like this. And you're grabbing her wrist to drag her. Aren't you going to smear that blood? I don't remember anybody saying any kind of smears or anything on her. It was just the palm of her hands that had blood on them. So that's interesting. If anybody knows that detail, that if she really was dragged, and was there smeared blood around the wrist? Was there wiped? Was it wiped? Any evidence of wiping? Put it in the comments if you know anything about that. Additionally, there were no drag marks there. Canadian sending something ... Sorry, I can't see your full name in the Streamlabs. Hello, I found you by accident. I think you are in my head speaking my words, LOL. And you are the most normal looking real person I have seen on YouTube. I agree. Thank you. You're welcome. And thank you very much. I appreciate that. Even got my flannel on. Under that though, I live in Cambodia. I'm from California, but so I've just got like this sarong on. And I just put this on. So, because if you don't see my sarong, then I look like I'm naked. Anyway, but thank you that I'm just normal. I'm just a normal person that has common sense. You know, there are still some of us that have common sense. You know, I encourage you to, like, once this is over, like, go back and listen from the beginning. If you like what I'm saying now, I mean, it's pretty much been building up to this. Okay, so the blood splatter and forensic pathologist, as we were saying, think that when she was dragged, that's when the blood went the wrong way. I don't know. I kind of okay. If I say that's a possibility, you know what else is also a possibility is being strung up in a tree like a deer. Okay. But there wasn't any ligatures or anything like that. Got to say, like, around her ankles, like if you were tied up, you think that there'd maybe be some rope marks or something. And they said that there was no evidence of the girls being bound. Right. So whether you're being kidnapped and bound, just so you can't fight back, or you're being hung from a tree, I would think that would make ligature marks. All right. So if there were no signs of being bound, then that would cut that out. But I don't know. What if she was laid on a table or something? I mean, because they're saying that the girls were killed there. And certainly that's a possibility. I'm not going to say it's not a possibility, but there's also people that think, and I think it makes sense, that they could have been killed somewhere else and brought there. They could have been killed there later in the evening. But if they were killed somewhere else and then brought there, I mean, and if they had been bled out, I'm just going if, what if? And so then if they had been bled out, so what if they were like on a table or something? Then you wouldn't have any, kind of like an altar. Of course, the whole Odinist things means that you would be next to the water for the sacrifice. You'd be with the trees and the water. But maybe the whole rune, the sticks with the rune thing, was just to blame it on the Odinists. You know, I don't know. Then what if there was like a bucket or something and they needed that for part of their ritual, or to make it look like there was a ritual, and they poured some of it into a pool at their feet? I don't know. I don't know. It's a possibility. But anyway, the blood on Libby's face doesn't make sense, and dragging her doesn't make sense. So, and whenever something, remember, when something doesn't make sense, that's doubt. Right? The hair. So Abby's hands were like this, apparently. Okay, I haven't seen a picture of their bodies. Like I said, I saw a real picture with their bodies blacked out, so that I could see the sticks, the real sticks and the real ground, but their bodies were blacked out. So apparently her hands were like this. Her hands were clean. So the forensic pathologist that said that people have this natural reflex to go like this, and this is why Libby had blood on her hands, was asked, well, why didn't Libby have the same, why didn't Abby have the same reflex and get blood on her hands? How come her hands were clean? And he said in his entire career, he's never seen a crime scene like this. He's never seen a body like Abby's, like that, where they didn't, and the hands were clean. Hands were clean. There was no blood on her anywhere. Maybe there were some leaves in her hair or something, but not, there was some debris, a little bit of debris, but her hand, and in fact, Andrea Burkhart, who I preferred to listen to, I'd listened to Bob Motta a little bit, and who was there, and I'd listened to Lawyer Lee a little bit, who was there, and then sometimes Leilani from, I think that's her name, I might have the name wrong, but Truth and Transparency, sometimes she was there. She wasn't there for every day. Andrea Burkhart was there every day, and she was very precise with what she told. So I followed her most of the time. She kept using the word pristine, that Abby was pristine, and it just stuck with her because it didn't make sense how pristine she was. Okay. But her hands are like this, and what's wrapped around her pinky? A hair with a follicle, a hair that's maybe got like pulled out. Because your follicle stays in your head to grow new hair. So, right. So if your hair falls out, the follicle stays inside your skin so that a new hair can grow. So your shedding hair doesn't have that follicle. This had a follicle, like it had been pulled out. Now, the prosecution says that the sweatshirt that she had on, which was Libby's sister Kelsey's sweatshirt, apparently, and so that's why it would, because they didn't actually test the hair until during the middle of the trial that this came up, like you didn't test it. So they rushed to get some testing done because they just assumed that it was Kelsey's hair because it was Kelsey's sweatshirt. And but they didn't want to. They said they didn't want to do a DNA test on it, on some of the evidence that they had, because it would use it up. There's some tests you can do that you still have more sample for future tests, and there's some tests that will like use it all up. And they didn't want to use it all up in case there was future technology that could get a better result. So they wanted to preserve it. That's what they said. But apparently, I think it did end up being Kelsey's hair. So there's a lot of heat going on Kelsey right now, and I'll tell you, the first thing I saw of her, whatever it was, I was like, just something didn't sit right with me. She was like too happy. The grandmother said she was really sad for a couple of months and didn't kind of like speak to anybody until after a couple of months. So like she had dealt with her grief or something. I don't know. She just still seemed like too happy. And then if you see when she was doing like this interview of Doug Carter, who's the superintendent of the Indiana State Police, and she interviewed him, and it's a really nice interview set up with microphones and everything. I don't know where that was, but the way that her and Doug Carter look at each other is just weird to me. It's just weird. It just gives me creepy vibes. I'm sorry. And then like they were both sitting near each other with the Dr. Phil show. That like the Dr. Phil did a show about Abby and Libby, and again the way they like look at each other, just I don't know. There's a lot of people now that the trial has come out, because so many people were like, well, wait till we see the evidence at the trial, because maybe the state has more than what they're talking about. They're keeping stuff back. They're keeping their cards close to their chest. Let's wait until the trial and see what they have. And what they had was a big fat nothing burger. I'm sorry, and you're welcome. You're welcome to be here. If you disagree with me, that's perfectly fine. I welcome challenge. I welcome discourse. So you don't have to believe but I'm just letting you know what I believe. So the sister's hair, no restraints, mention that. Abby's clean hands and no debris, mention that. Little debris. The clothes were changed. We know that. Chalet says that you agree with me. Thank you, Chalet, for agreeing with me. I see in Streamlabs it says that I got eight eyeballs. All right, so maybe some people that are watching don't agree, and I just want to know I just want you to know that you're also welcome here. Okay. The geofencing. So we talked about that. No witness identified Richard Allen. We talked about that. Why would Todd Click write the prosecutor and defense if the Odinist theory was flimsy? So that is, I think, no, Judge Gall, no Todd Click. Who is Todd Click? He's one of the 3 law enforcement officers that were investigating the Odinism suspects. Okay. So the news comes on 5.5 years later. Okay. Oh, by the way, why did he stop? Let me tell you why. Of these 3 guys, there was another one of them. Forgive me, I don't remember his name because I don't have the notes about it right here. Varency, I think it was. I think he was an FBI agent, and he was outside the like an FBI office. Well, he was in the office. He hears something. He goes outside, and the guy that looks very Odinist, very Vinlander-ish, shoots him, point blank, shoots him right there in front of the office. And he's arrested. He's taken down. He's arrested. This guy's, as far as I know, is incarcerated right now. And so then Click and the 3rd guy said, we're off the case. So they dropped it at that point. And that had been about 3 years in. Okay. Until then, they were investigating this. So now they've stepped back. So 5.5 years later, Richard Allen gets arrested. And Todd Click goes, what? What are you talking about? This guy, this isn't the guy. And he goes, okay. There was a lot of roadblocks with the law enforcement that was investigating. We kept giving him this tip and that tip, and this show is not for all of that. But they were giving them all these tips. We did mention the Elvis Fields confession. That was one of them. There were other cell phone, here's a cell phone, here's this, here's that, and law enforcement go, okay, thanks guys. All right, see ya. And they would never follow up. They didn't follow up with Elvis Fields. They didn't follow up to go collect the cell phone. They didn't. every time these three guys would give them leads, which as their job, law enforcement say, okay, great, thanks, see ya, and do nothing. All right. So Todd Click's thinking, well, maybe law enforcement didn't tell the prosecutor that there's this, wait a minute, look over here. Did you know about this? So he writes a letter to Nick McClellan, the prosecutor. He says, hey, Nick, are you aware about these guys? Because I think you got the wrong guy. He's got nothing to do with this. And I think they called him in to question him and stuff like this, and like pretty much told him, give over all your notes, give everything over, or, you know, leave us alone, right? So then he goes, well, oh, so the prosecution, because he was giving the prosecutor the benefit of the doubt that maybe law enforcement was keeping stuff from him. So he's like, oh, this is how you're going to play? All right. And he walks over to the defense and gives them all his information. So, and I'm assuming his information was also already in the discovery, but there was so much discovery, maybe they hadn't come across. It's like, oh, look, well, let me search the computer files for Click, for Todd Click, and for Ferenczi, and for Elvis Fields, and for Holder, and that, you know, somehow they found it in the discovery. But Todd Click, yeah, it was like, okay, you guys don't want to listen to me, I'm going over here. Because I don't, you know, something smells rotten in Denmark, or in this case, Delphi, right? Why would he put his neck on the line and do that if it was so flimsy? Now, it could be the wrong path. It could be the wrong path. It could be someone framing the Odinists, right? But something, I don't think one person did it, and I don't think they did it in the time frame, as mentioned before, of 213 to 232. I don't think there was enough time to get down across the bridge and commit these murders, you know, in that time frame. So one last thing before we finish up. I got some what ifs and like some possible scenarios that are going on out there that I can't say one or the other, but the thing is, if one is possible and two is possible and three is possible, well, then I've got reasonable doubt about which one it is, right? The drugs is number one, the drugs, like there's meth production going on. The girls stumbled across the meth stuff. Derek German, in this, the whole drug ring thing, if it's only drugs and there's no Odinism and there's no PORN or trafficking or anything like that, it's just drugs, then you also have to look at Derek German, who someone mentioned is Libby's dad. On a previous live, I said, I'm not sure if Derek's her uncle or her dad. I wasn't sure. Now it was said that Libby's dad is Derek German. In 2016, just 1 year before, because he was using drugs, that he snitched. He was a snitch. So people that are doing a drug ring, if you snitch on them, then sometimes they'll go after your family members to hurt you, right? Or to shut you up or whatever. So that's one theory. Number two, the PORN and the trafficking. That's, I find a very interesting one, that like maybe someone was just trying to take Libby, right? They were arranging to meet Libby. The Anthony Schatz was arranging to meet Libby. So if there was somebody on the other side of the bridge, besides bridge guy walking on the bridge, what if, and I have to give some credit for some of this thought to The Reckoning. Okay, if you can check her channel if you want to. But it's a possibility if you had somebody there that wanted to take Libby for the trafficking, and they wanted Abby to be a witness so that the bridge guy is in on it, but in the sense that when Abby runs to like get help, she runs into that guy. And now they're like witnesses of Libby being taken because the person gets away with her fast, right? Maybe in the van that was on the bridge on the road under the bridge at 227. I don't know. I don't know how that would play out. But I thought that was interesting. I thought that was an interesting idea. But Abby wouldn't leave. Abby wouldn't leave Libby. And now their plan to take only Libby, which could tie in with the drug meth, with her dad, right? Then the plan to take only Libby then got foiled because now they have Abby and Libby and they don't want to deal with two people. They only wanted to deal with the one person. And then that kind of like brings me around to the when the lawyers were kicked off the case and new lawyers were put on. Once Baldwin and Rosie were put back on the case, then those other lawyers that took it over for a little while, one of them spoke out in an interview and said one of the girls was murdered and the other was sacrificed. Libby would be most likely the sacrifice and Abby being murdered because she was there. So I thought that was the third, that it was a ritual of sacrifice. Could it be Odinism or could it be some kind of other just straight out Satanism? Generational Satanism? Could it be somebody making up their own religion? Maybe has some roots with Odinism. Maybe has some roots with Satanism. Some kind of magic. They need the blood for the power. Yeah. So what if one person is at the end of the bridge to grab Libby and bridge guy's there to help Abby as she runs, but she doesn't run. So now their plan has to change. That's that what if. 2, what if the video was faked? We're basing a lot on the 213 video. Because in that video, I don't, when she lifts it up, how clearly do we see Abby? Because you know who was at the trail that looks like Abby? Not exactly, not like twins, but they look similar, is Bree. And who's Bree? Bree's the sister of Kelsey's boyfriend. Who's Kelsey? Libby's sister. So, and I don't know, but if Kelsey was involved, then would Bree also be involved? If, right? And don't go attacking these people or anything. I'm not saying, I'm just doing a thought experiment. Maybe it won't play out, right? But if, could Bree be on the bridge as if she's Abby? Because if it's, maybe it's clear enough that we know it's Abby 100%. I didn't see the video. So I'm just questioning, was the video clear enough? Do we know 100% that was Abby? Or could it have been someone who looks similar to Abby, playing Abby, to make a fake video? To set things in motion. In Abby's shirt, because they already have Abby's shirt. Just make Bree wear Abby's shirt. I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. 3, what if someone else had Libby's phone? They make the video on the south side of the bridge. Then they walk back across, instead of going down the hill, down the creek. But they make the little video, right? Because the video doesn't show them actually going all the way down and across the creek. It was just 40 seconds. So then, what if someone else, and I won't mention any names, had Libby's phone, does the quick video thing, then walks back across the, because everybody, that's the bridge guy, the person like Abby, uh, they're all in. They would have to be in on this if this was the case, which it may not be. But if it was, then that person walks back across the bridge to the other side. Because what I've seen in a video just today or yesterday is there's a very clear trail to the crime scene that was there before on the other side, on the starting point. So like if on the north side of the bridge, there's a trail that goes off to the east, right? Very clear trail. And you go down and then you walk along, it's 60 feet, right? Where the bridge is 60 feet. And so it gets lower, right? But it goes along that ridge that's by the river, and it goes along the river on that ridge until it gets to the ravine. If you've been following this case, you know there's a ravine right next to the crime scene. And then with that trail, then you got to go down the ravine and back up the ravine. Now the ravine's only about 10 feet. I don't think it's 20 feet. But I don't know, maybe an Apple Health app could, because you know what? That happening, if that was to happen, or even if it was the girls themselves, it matches the health data. The distance of going down that trail to the crime scene, and then those last 50 steps, there's a 20 feet up, going up. It doesn't register going down, it only registers going up. And so there's like 2 floors. Well, what if that's coming out the other side of the ravine and then you're right there at the crime scene? So I find that a very interesting what if. The defense never said any of this. What if the girls were put in a vehicle on the south side, so where we think they were abducted, right? Or what if they were put in a vehicle and driven somewhere and then held there until later in the evening, right? Okay, it's obvious to think, well, Brad Weber's house is just at the end of that drive, and he's got barns and stuff because remember, there's no movement of the phone. So if it's in a car, then there's no movement until you get out of the car. Then you've got your 50 meters or 68 steps from the car to an outbuilding, and then up 2 floors to where you're going to be held. And at that point, the phone is taken and turned off or something, at least taken away. Because at 5:30, remember, we get the headphones plugged in, or something in the headphone jack gets plugged in until 10:30 when it gets taken out. Yeah, that really, to me, if I'm on that jury, that alone puts doubt in my head. I don't know I would love to know how they deliberated about that. I would love to know, because the police say the phone was under the body at 2:32 and it never moved again. So you're telling me that someone went there so Abby and Libby's bodies are there at 2:32. They haven't moved. And at 5:30, someone walks to the crime scene and plugs something in the phone and then walks away and comes back at 10:30 and plugs it back in again. And what if it was something that was like, well, I think if it was taking data or putting on data, then that would show up in data. So a lot of people think of Brad Weber, but you know who else just lived down the road in Delhi? The city of Delhi is very close to this park. You can walk there. You don't have to drive there. You can walk there. There's paths to walk there. Patrick Westphal was actually living in Delphi. I think Brad Holder was living in Logansport, which is just like another city. I think he was just like one town over. I don't think he was actually living, but Patrick Westphal had a house living in Delphi. And that distance from like the abduction to his house would fit them, because it's like 7 minutes or something that the phone wasn't moving. That's enough time to get there. So there's another what if. So that's that's it. That's all the notes. I'm sure there's other things that I think about and and stuff, but these are the ones I made notes of and shared with you today. So I don't know that this is all wrapped up. Can we say it's wrapped up? The trial's wrapped up. I'm sure there's going to be an appeal. Will Richard Allen live long enough for an appeal? I don't know. But I don't feel settled with it. I have doubts. Could Richard Allen have done it? Maybe. I kind of hesitate to think that any one person did it at 2:30, that they were killed at 2:30. I have a hard time putting all the other data together to make that fit, whether it's Richard Allen or somebody else. Got to go. Have a great day. Okay, Mumsy, love you. And anybody else who wants to pop out, let me say my final thing, and that is that love transcends time and space. And so whenever and wherever you're watching this, I love you. I do. And I thank you for joining me. And hey, I'm almost at 500 subscribers. I'm like 12 subscribers away. So I don't do true crime every time. If you're attracted because of the true crime, I think at least once a week, like every Wednesday, I will do true crime. If there's something for me to say, I'm going to come on and say it, whatever day of the week it is. But I hate like just talking about the same stuff all the time, regurgitation. I'm not into that. So you're not going to find me just talking and talking and talking and talking just to have a video. That's not me. But I am going to like commit to every Wednesday doing true crime. And if there's something interesting outside of that, then I'll come on. But I do have like some music trivia on Tuesdays. Tomorrow I'm going to do a travel vlog, but sometimes we play games. Sometimes on Sunday nights I do crosswords, just to give us a break, because we're all these true crime junkies, but sometimes you just need to take a break. So I try to give you a break. And then when I have something to say, I say it. So that's who I am. And if that interests you, please subscribe. I'd appreciate it. So that's it for me today. It's been an hour and a half. Hope you found it useful information. And I'll see you when I see you.